It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening and welcome to tonight's public hearing. My name is John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. We have 3 cases on for hearing this evening. The first is case TP-ENT 0223-00013, First and Foothills Pad. This is a continued hearing from April 27, 2023. Is the applicant present? Or the applicant's representative?
Yes, sir, Mr. Urino. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Underwood. When we broke last time, I think your client was going to commission a traffic study for the development, and I haven't seen that come across my desk yet, but I'm assuming that it's not quite ready and that we're going to ask to continue the hearing. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Urino. We're wrapping that up now, and we also would like to review it with City of Tucson Department of Transportation and Mobility. So we have a meeting set up with them for next Tuesday, and then we also wanted to meet with someone in the building department about our construction access and staging before we meet for reconsideration of the case. So we're close, but we're not quite there, and we wanted to be able to give you some more time to review things as well before you reconsider.
That's fine. What does your timing look like, Mr. Underwood, as far as having those? And I'm not trying to rush you. I'm under some constraints in terms of how long I can set the next hearing out from today. And then on a personal matter, I'll be out of town from June 13th through June 22nd. So what we could do is reset it for a time before I go away, and maybe by then you'll have a better idea when you'll be all ready. Does that work for you? Because I can't put it out more than 30 days, and that would mean the latest we could reconvene would be June 23rd, which is a Friday. But if that didn't seem like it was going to work, we could just reset it for June 8th, see where we are, and then with the understanding that we'd be continuing it again from June 8th, another 30 days to get your, because what I'd like to have happen is you do the work you want to do, right? And then I want to make sure that interested parties who would want to review that before the hearing have an opportunity to do that. So what's the timing look like in that case?
So for a June 23rd meeting, that would be fine, I think. In terms of having it on the 8th, I think we could also have the information available, assuming that we can meet with both departments next week. However, I will also be out of town the 7th through the 9th of June.
All right. So if we reset it to June 23rd, do you believe you'll have the materials ready in time to give other interested parties at least a week to review the materials before the June 23rd hearing?
Absolutely.
All right. So I know Mr. Dolan has asked, Duran, I believe. Mr. Tom Duran is present, I see, and he asked to speak tonight. So Mr. Duran, you've heard what's transpired. We're not going to have a substantive hearing tonight on the matter, but I would like to give you the opportunity to say anything you'd like to say, with the understanding we're probably going to be talking about the merits of things at the continued date, which looks like it's probably going to be June 23rd, but go right ahead, sir. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
There you go. I hope that's better. Thank
good.
you for the opportunity. I'm happy to wait till the next time.
Okay.
Do you think that's more suitable?
I think that makes sense.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Is anyone else in the audience wishing to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, I'm continuing this case to June 23rd, 2023, and the applicant has agreed, and Mr. Underwood will, as the applicant's representative, provide whatever materials you intend to present at that continued hearing, provide it to Planning and Development Services, of course, and then I would ask Planning and Development Services to post it on the website so that other interested parties can have access to it before the hearing. And you'll get that wrapped at least a week before the June 23rd date. Sound good?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
And we'll make sure that we have all the information posted.
Thank you, Ms. Perrell. Appreciate that very much. All right, so our next case is case C92202, Tucson Mountain RV Park pad. Mr. Struve, are you presenting on this one?
Yes, I am, Mr. Reno.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. This is a request by Thomas Guido, PE of TNT Engineering on behalf of the property owner, Danny Eftimoff of Danny Builders. The request is to rezone approximately 0.95 acres from R1 to planned area development or PAD zoning to establish the Tucson Mountain Recreational Vehicle Park PAD. This item was remanded to the zoning examiner by Mayor and Council on February 22nd, 2023. Mayor and Council requested a new public hearing to seek additional public comment regarding whether the changes to the application adequately address the issues raised in the protests received. This proposal is for a 20-unit RV park with a registration and security office and a small restroom and laundry area. The rezoning site is located at 2059 West Ajo Way on the south side of Ajo, approximately 400 feet east of the intersection of West Ajo and La Cholla Boulevard. The initial proposal was for a 34-unit RV park. Following the zoning examiner's May 24th, 2022 preliminary report, the applicant modified their proposal, reducing it to 29 units. After the issuance of the June 30th, 2022 final report, the applicant worked with the Ward 1 office and surrounding neighborhood to better address the concerns and issues raised during the public hearings. Since June of 2022, significant changes and modifications have been made to the proposal, which has been reduced to the above mentioned 20 units. The revised conceptual development plan based on neighborhood input document, which was received on January 18th, 2023, shows all updates to the plan that have been made by the applicant. These include, but are not limited to, the reduction to 20 units, as well as enhanced security screening, an 8-foot masonry wall along the southern property line, landscape buffering, water harvesting, additional guest parking, and a space for an on-site manager's housing. A total of 17 approvals and 8 protests have been received for this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Struve. Would the applicant's representative like to be heard, Mr. Guido? Mr. Guido, are you present? Would you like to be heard?
Tom, I think you might be on mute.
There we go. I had a hard time getting it off of mute. Sorry about that.
No problem. Just start with your name and address, sir.
My name is Thomas E. Guido, Jr. I'm at 1925 West River Road, Unit 6108, Tucson, Arizona, 85704.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So is the revised preliminary development plan dated January 18, 2023, does that show all of the changes that have been made to the proposed pad document?
All those that lend themselves to a plan view of the site, yes.
Sure. Thanks. I mean, it may be me. I counted 21 spaces. They're not numbered, which is fine, but am I correct in understanding that the pad document states 20 RV spaces, not 21?
You're correct. It should be 20 spaces, not
All right.
21.
And to the extent the PDP needs clarification on that point, is the applicant prepared to do so?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. There were some questions, and I'll let Ms. Baker raise them, but I just wanted to clear up from my understanding. The proposed pad has been revised to provide for 30-foot max RV usage at the proposed site. Is that right?
Yeah, 30-foot depth is the proposed maximum.
So there's a belief, I think, that there's proposed a mobile home for a manager's residence or for an owner's residence. Is that correct?
I don't think it's a proposed mobile home. I believe it's a regular structure is what we're thinking at this point.
The existing structure that's there.
No, that would be the property owner's home. And then there would be also additional manager's office or home.
So on the PDP, I saw in the, if I have my orientation correct, southwest corner, just a typed in designation, manager's residence.
That's correct, sir.
That's what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
And currently there's nothing built there, correct?
No, there's not.
Does the pad state what that manager's residence can consist of, or is it silent on that point?
It doesn't state any specifics.
Does it state anything about what the setback would be from any structure that would be built there?
Well, it would be a 10-foot setback with a buffer yard for the whole continuous south side, and then also on the west side. So it would be up to the northeast, 10 foot from the west and 10 foot from the south. Other than that, no.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anything you would like to add, Mr. Guido?
Well, we believe we've adequately addressed all of the concerns from the local neighbors. We've gone through quite a few iterations, and that's fine. I'm of the opinion that everybody's happy with it. I know there's a couple of protests. It seemed like one individual wasn't quite sure how the process worked, the rezoning process in the city. And I think they were looking to see the improvements beforehand, where actually the improvements would come after approval by mayor and council.
Understood. I saw that as well. All right. Thank you. And then I'm going to open it up. We've had a few requests to speak, and then I'll open it up after that to anyone else in the audience. Before I do so, I want to point out that in this case, because it's a case that's been remanded from mayor and council with a specific direction, my job is a little different than it is in the normal rezoning case. In this case, mayor and council has remanded this matter to me to hold a hearing on the issue of whether the changes that the applicant made to the proposed pad satisfy or deal with the objections that were raised by the neighboring property owners. So that's the focus I'm going to take when I write my report back to the mayor and council. So it's a little different than a normal rezoning case. Having said that, I don't intend to, that any speaker tonight, I'm not asking you to curtail your remarks or make different remarks, but just wanted you to know what the scope of what I'm supposed to do as zoning examiner on remand is. So we had a request from Beryl Baker. Ms. Baker, would you like to be heard? If so, please start with your name and address.
Beryl Baker, 2723 South Mission.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
I wish I'd known what you just said, but I did notice in some of your comments, you had read some of the comments we sent to you. So I tried not to repeat them because I already gave them to you.
Sure.
So, as a facilitator for the neighborhood, it is our responsibility to try to support the people who will be directly impacted by development. Those people who have opposed this pad may be few, but they are owners who have lived there a long time. Those who signed the petition by the owner generally are new or renters or not affected by the rezoning or expect to profit from the rezoning. We are thankful the owner has made effort to listen and make changes. However, it would have been nice had he sat down and truly listened to his neighbors. This would have prevented so many public meetings on these issues instead of his trying to take it around to try to gain the highest density he could manage, which I understand developers do. So he's no different than any other developer. While looking through the material the owner submitted, found some discrepancies within the document. Originally, the owner said he lived on the property. One other example was a reference to the main house as being the manager's house. Then later said they're going to use 2 spaces. We assume of the 20 spaces for a caretaker's house or use. Then at the end of the presentation, a picture that shows a manager's house on the southwest corner of the property separate from the spaces. It also implies the caretaker will be there 24/7. It's unreasonable to believe anyone would stay on a piece of property 24/7. Another example referred to the new trees as being 25 feet apart and then later as 30 feet apart. There may be more discrepancies that we have missed, however. If this rezoning is approved, we worry about what he will actually do based on the discrepancy in his plan. As we have stated before, we believe in historical use of properties, and we believe this property could truly be a destination RV park if the owner thought in terms of how to create an actual pretty park instead of just how to utilize all the space for vehicles. We think he could create a pretty little park on the south side that would help buffer the property owners on the south, as well as utilizing runoff from the property for a positive benefit to the neighborhood. If you decide to allow this result, we would request that there be restrictions placed within the pad that would keep or push the project for an environmentally sustainable place that would help combat the growing warming of the Southwest. We recognize this may not be in your privy as a zoning examiner, but as you recognize the number of the spaces, even with just 20, far exceed what most pads allow for this size property. For a pad, that's just a question. It's reasonable to request that there be restrictions put on the pad that go with the pad in case the owner chooses to sell to someone else. This would give the neighbors some assurances that the property could be developed in a way that enhances their lives. We are glad that this came back to you, as we have seen you are even-handed in intent of the codes. You have a better sense of whether this proposed plan fits with the intent of a PAD. We wish you could have weighed in on the new proposal before it went to the City Council. Having said all this, since we are not being directly impacted until we have to fight the commercial rezoning east of there, we defer to the vocal and involved neighborhoods who would prefer this remain R1. Thank you for your time, and I apologize if I didn't stay focused on the issues which you feel that we're supposed to be focusing on. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. And as I indicated, and I still believe, I'm here to listen to the views that are expressed, and I did not intend in my opening remarks to do anything except explain what the process is from here out. I didn't want to have you curtail your remarks or change them in any way, and I appreciate everything you said. We had a request. Yes, you're welcome. We had a request from Mary Montoya. Ms. Montoya, are you present? Would like to be heard?
This is Mary Montoya.
Thank you,
Can you
Ms.
hear me?
Montoya. Just start with your address, please, and then please go right ahead after that.
Okay, it's 2042 West Probosco Drive. We're right behind the park. I'm one of the neighbors that is impacted, one of the 5 that did protests. And being what you said about being remanded to you, yeah, that's a whole different thing that, you know, we didn't know about, because all of us, I'm talking for my neighbors, we didn't like the 20 units. We never said we wanted 20 units there. We just want it redone, either lesser units, not the parking, visitor parking in the back of our houses, or he wants it. We just wanted to stay as an R1. You know, we just aren't happy having an RV park in our backyards anymore. So that's basically what I had already sent my comments to the zoning and to Mr. Bill, and it's just the history of the property. When it was used as an RV park, we experienced increased crime, congestion, and noise. You know, and we just don't want that to happen again. You know, and like I say, there might be some that approve, but they don't live right behind the park and have lived what we've lived here with. Being I've been here the longest, 38 years. So we've seen a lot and done a lot. So I hope you reconsider. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Montoya. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We had a request to speak from Michael Campbell. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I think some of this is going to be a little outside the scope of what you're looking for specifically, but I'll keep to the original comments that I had planned on. Likely some of them will not inform your final recommendation to mayor and council. Just to follow up on one of the original commenters who mentioned warming in the Southwest, wanted to say I appreciate that perspective and thank them for sharing it. One specific issue that I did have looking at the proposal, it mentioned plans for active water harvesting using a pump system to distribute water to the different basins that would supply water to the trees, and perhaps a passive system might be a little bit more reliable if it's possible to manage that with the slope on site. And I haven't looked at it in sufficient detail to know whether or not a passive system is practical given the runoff issues there. One of the things I noticed is that some of the Plan Tucson goals and policies that were cited were the housing density units. And And there's a certain, density that's preferable, especially along an arterial, but I understand there's also a 12-month stay for visitors at this site. And so if it's housing, it's housing. And I don't know any form of housing where every tenant is gone after 12 months. And, nothing against the concept of an RV park. I do like the fact that RVs are no longer quite the behemoths that they used to be. I think this is a pretty unique idea, and repurposing an existing site in a way that reflects some positive trends. But if it is housing, then it is appropriate to use the Plan Tucson goals for housing. If it is not housing, if it is, a commercial amenity for travelers, then City of Tucson and the developer should be looking at different goals, different policies from Plan Tucson to inform their interpretation of what belongs there, what doesn't. I've mentioned this in the past on other projects, and this is maybe outside the scope of what mayor and council are looking for, but I think it's important, especially given the planned use for the site. These development proposals need to take into account what the master trails plan is for Pima County, and there is the Ajo Greenway planned for the Ajo corridor, and I didn't see reference to it anywhere in the materials. It's possible it didn't come up when I did a quick search for it. Maybe they didn't mention it, but it's something that's there, and being able to get along, using active transportation is presumably something that's especially important for RV travelers. And I know there was a hit and run near one of the parks that someone had been walking to from the neighborhood within the last year or so. So that's an issue that's I think important to everyone in Tucson right now. And then finally, I just want to follow up on a couple other comments that people had made, which were relating to ownership in the area and length of time in which they lived in the area. And I know it's a tricky issue for everyone to balance, as far as people wanting change versus not wanting change, need for change versus that desire to feel like you have a stable place to live. But I would say, renters also have an interest in quality of life around them. And people who do not own homes have an interest in the land use decisions that Tucson makes. And I would just ask the neighbors to, as they consider the importance of their views, how they might think about balancing the needs of people who are not homeowners if we preferentially consider the views of those who are owners. And I don't think I have a good answer for that, but I think it's always good to think about. So again, as always, appreciate the opportunity to be involved and just be part of the public process. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case?
Can I respond to some of these comments, Mr.
Yes,
Urino?
you will in just a minute.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. Would anyone else besides Mr. Guido like to be heard? Mr. Guido, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate the comment from Mr. Campbell about the uniqueness of this project. That's why we decided to go with a PAD type of rezoning, in that there really isn't anything in the current zoning code that addresses the smaller RV parks that supply parking slips for smaller RVs. And we thought, being on Ajo Way, this would make a very appropriate site for something like that. It's a very transitional type of project, commercial project. It's not really residential and it's not really commercial. It's kind of in between, where people have a temporary residence to enjoy what Tucson has to offer. Other than that, I'd be happy to talk with anybody on the phone if you have further questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Guido. I'm closing the public hearing on case C92202. Our third and final case this evening is case TP ENT 0323-00017 T-Mobile Rhiannon Drive. Mr. Slater, are you presenting the staff report?
Yes, I am. Good
Please
evening.
go ahead.
All right, so this is a special exception land use request for the placement of 65-foot utility pole co-located with an existing Tucson Electric Power utility pole for the purposes of putting in a wireless communications facility and associated ground equipment. It's addressed on Rhiannon Road because that is the closest residential parcel to the site. The site itself will be in the right-of-way to the south of Golf Links, about 230 feet west of Pantano Road. There's an existing site about 450 feet away to the east-northeast on the northeast corner of Golf Links and Pantano, but that site is going to be impacted by the replacement of utility poles as part of an unrelated TEP project that's going to, it's going to eliminate that wireless communications facility. And outside of that, this will be the only communications facility within about a mile radius. The applicant has demonstrated in their design compatibility report that this would satisfy the wireless communication needs in the area. And staff is supportive of the request.
Thank you, Mr. Slater. Just one quick question. So the graphic of the map makes it appear that this is going to be on the residential lot to the south of the right-of-way, but it's actually going to be in the right-of-way. Is that correct?
Yes. So in the preliminary development package that the applicant submitted, this is going to be in the right-of-way, co-located with the existing Tucson Electric Power lines, taking the place of one of the 39-foot utility poles, extending it up to 65 feet and placing the antennas at the top of that utility pole.
Understood. Appreciate the clarification. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Yes, hi, John. My name is Scott Hopper. I work for Pinnacle Consulting, working on behalf of T-Mobile. The site that's being removed is T-Mobile's site. So T-Mobile is wanting to relocate approximately 400 feet. I think it'd be to the southwest. And we wanted to state we did have some protests and one positive response. Most of the protests were from visual impact. TEP has several of these poles common in this area. I believe the visual impact will be minimal, if none. If you look from Google Earth Street View and place yourself at the back in alignment with those homes, the lowest lines are about 20 feet above grade, and those lines are above the mountain views to the north horizon. So I do not think, with the antennas being at 65 feet, that there is going to be any impact to views. Then the neighbors that are further into the community, their views are pretty much impacted from the homes across the street.
Thank you. Would you please describe the coverage issues that this will address? And I assume they're impacted by the need to take down, if you will, an existing T-Mobile antenna. Is that right?
Correct. TEP has asked them to remove their antennas from the site on the northeast corner of Pantano and Golf Links. And with that being removed, there will be a lot less coverage because they won't have any coverage from what's being provided from those antennas. With this new location or this relocation, it will maintain or improve coverage for people that are used to having this coverage in this area.
Thank you. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case?
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and share some slides that I put together, if that's okay.
Yeah, please state your name and address for the record.
Michael Campbell, 5935 East Hampton Street. Here we go. Let me go into slideshow mode here. Okay. You remind me how I go ahead and share slides from my point of view.
I can make you a co-host, and I think that will give you your permission.
So much. Let me go ahead and I'm going to just, I apologize for this. I'm going to save this as a PDF here because it might be a little easier to share on my end. All right. Are you looking at my screen right now or?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, there should be a button at the bottom of your screen where it says share screen on the Zoom.
Here we go. Let's try this again.
There should be a toolbar at the bottom, right in the middle, a green share screen.
Yeah, here we go. It wants me to quit the app and reopen it to enable that permission. So I'm going to log out of the meeting and log back in. I thank you for your patience on this. Okay, I think you're going to have to make me a presenter again. And for everyone who's still hanging in there, thank you. Here we go. Are you all seeing that now?
I believe so. Go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. So I visited the site and I just had some observations to share after visiting that site. Want to show the existing conditions to you because I think it's always easier if you've got some photographs to help place it in context.
Just for context, I have been to the site.
Oh, awesome. Fantastic.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, great. So yeah, so you're familiar with what we're looking at right here. This is, you know, this, you see a gap between trees, which is where that structure is going to go. And you've got a tree that's kind of one that's on the left of the guy wire and one that's on the right of that guy wire right there. And this wants to auto advance on me. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm turning into my father here trying to use PowerPoint. You know, if you look at the kind of wider angle view, this is via street view, you see again that first and second tree there, and then you see a cluster of 3 trees behind the utility pole. And so that's 5 trees altogether. You look at the project proposal and, you know, it shows this one tree right here. It shows, you know, clipped out of this image, it shows a cluster of 3 trees there for a total of 4. And so there's loss of a tree here that's not reflected in the plan. And it talks about that existing tree to be trimmed by a contractor, which practically speaking is going to bring a fair amount back from that wall. So there's going to be some significant loss of canopy in that area right there. But, you know, the other thing you see right here is this shows the dimensions of the amount of space that you've got between the edge of that structure and the curb, which is 17 feet. And then you've got these utility alignments as well, where you've got the utility poles in that right of way. And that's going to become relevant in some later slides that I show. These are transportation conditions in the area. Apparently there's a light pole missing. I'm not sure why that's missing, if it came down in a storm or if a vehicle drove into it or what, but it's not the most pleasant place to walk. Fairly heavy traffic going along this road right here. And I've biked this. I'm pretty comfortable on a bike. You know, getting passed by traffic on speedway is something that I'm fairly accustomed to. And conditions on this road right here are not great if you're on skinny tires, because you have to ride on the asphalt, and you're going to catch a tire and go down if you hit that seam in the wrong way between the asphalt and the curb. So practically speaking, that's a pretty darn narrow bike lane. It puts you pretty close to traffic.
Mr. Campbell, I don't want to interrupt unnecessarily, but
yeah,
does this have anything to do with the case that we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll show you how it gets to the case based on the complete streets plans that City of Tucson has. So yeah, here you go. This is what it looks like. You know, you can see the lane control that drivers have in that area. This is not a pleasant place to ride. I saw a fair number of cyclists going down the sidewalk here because that's where it makes sense for the majority of people to ride. Here's nearby land use, just to give a sense of what we're choosing between. You know, we're choosing between putting it in a green residential adjacent right of way versus, you know, heavy commercial development on the other side with a lot of existing pavement. And you know, we heard that this is the only tower within a mile. And if there's different meanings of the word tower that I'm not picking up on, I'd be very, very interested in learning more about that. But here you've got two towers that are on the opposite side of Pantano. These would be on the southeast corner of that intersection. And this is what the tower that's closer to Pantano looks like. It gives you an idea of the land use context there. This is land use context on the other tower. And, you know, we have people in charge of the project who I think are sensitive about getting that adjacent structure to blend into the wall that's next to it. And you can see there's a structure here that from this vantage point, which is similar to some of the vantage points shared in the plan, where it really does blend quite well into that wall when you look at it head on. But you look at it from another angle and you know, you can paint it in earth tones all you want, but it doesn't quite blend in there. And one of the questions here is, whose obligation is it to find a new site for this tower? This is from TEP's filing on the Irvington Loop that is necessitating removal of the existing tower. TEP says they're going to coordinate with the tower owner during project design as needed. And certainly with the proliferation of towers on some of the commercial land in the area, certainly I think it would be possible for one of the two parties to find a commercial site that they could lease and construct a tower on. And whether that's TEP's responsibility or the carrier's responsibility is probably up to them. But you know, I do think that's a relevant component of the context here. So impacts and significance here. You've got those tree amenities that are on a topographic high point on that road. And I live on a topographic high point myself. And I tell you that sound carries to those high points in a way that it does not carry to other places. You lose trees in that area, you lose canopy in that area, and you have road noise that carries on to residential properties nearby. The vegetation helps to a degree that I think is important. The other thing the vegetation does is it catches that PM 2.5 non-exhaust emissions that are coming from tire wear, brake dust from any busy 6-lane road. And again, you know, the fact that it's on a high point means that there's going to be an aesthetic component to that as well, where the loss of canopy is going to be heightened because that's what the eye is naturally drawn to, is those high points. It is the most visible point on the road. So it is the place where you would locate an eyesore if you wanted it to be the greatest possible eyesore. So I want to talk about UDC and plan compliance here. This is what the notice sign looked like when I went out to visit the site. One of the things in the paperwork that I observed was that Pima County is going to need to assign an address to this parcel. And that influences the question of what is the parcel that we're actually looking at? Are we looking at that residential parcel around which things were noticed? Or are we looking at the parcel, which is the right of way, which is an amenity to everyone in the neighborhood? So, you know, just to reflect some of the differences here, this image on the left is from January. These are the properties that were noticed when the neighborhood meeting went out. And then on the right, this is what was noticed, I believe, for the actual zoning examiner hearing. And you might want to double check me on that. But you've got two different notices. And this reflects the fact that the cart has kind of gone before the horse in terms of you need an address for a parcel so that you can do the notice properly.
Is that right? Or do you just need to know what the physical location is so you can measure it properly?
Yeah.
Address.
So the question is, are you going by impacts based on the parcel, or are you going by impacts to the site? And if you look at, you know, the one on the left where the perimeter is based on the parcel, you know, it's quite apparent. You've got this kind of Tetris-like shape. And then on the right, you've got, you know, this, it's not a perfect circle. It's clearly based around the shape of the parcel itself. So it just reading this, my understanding of the convention is that the notice is based on the parcel shape. So
I don't think that's correct, but. go
Hi,
ahead.
John. If I could jump in. So the notice areas are based on UDC code. And the notices that were sent out were in compliance with that Unified Development Code.
okay, yeah, I mean, that's something that,
Mr. Campbell, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, and if that's, that's clearly.
This is not intended to be a seminar.
Yeah.
Just go ahead. If you have other things you want to say about the
Yeah,
impacts.
yeah, I do. Yes.
Excuse me.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're correct. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So nearby towers, UDC requires that new towers require a minimum separation of 1 mile from any existing tower, regardless of ownership, unless documentation establishes that no practical alternatives exist. And I don't know that that's been established in the documentation, because you've got those nearby towers that I just showed you. And additionally, there's supposed to be notice to ward office for anything that is, I believe, in the gateway corridor. Again, you might want to check that. I couldn't find a list of the mailings that were sent out, but I noticed that in the paperwork that no meeting had been held with the ward office for Ward 4. So there's a procedural issue to be aware of there. If that's not important, it shouldn't be in the UDC. If it is important for special exceptions, then the paperwork should reflect whether or not that happened. Co-location, I'm sorry I didn't cite chapter and verse on this, but this is taken from the UDC. Appropriate measures need to be taken to reduce the proliferation of towers by co-location of new antennas on existing towers or with the facilities of other providers that are planned or located for development within the proposed service area. And there's not going to be future co-location of other cell providers on this tower right here. So that seems like a pretty appropriate measure. The tower should be designed to facilitate that requirement of the UDC if it's going to be put there. I have no problem with a tall tower. Make the tower taller if you need to put it in. It's, I think the tower itself is one of the lesser eyesores that you could possibly construct in Tucson. With respect to application materials, this is what's supposed to be submitted alongside the application. There's supposed to be a communication plan that shows the locations of all antenna or all towers in the city. I didn't see that. I don't know that that's necessary. If it's not, it shouldn't be in the UDC. But the provider needs to have a policy for the mitigation and the reduction of, just tower proliferation. You have all of these towers that are in the area already. So what's the provider's policy toward avoiding that? Why can an existing tower that's already on private land not be replaced with a taller tower that would facilitate their needs with that 65-foot pole and co-locate other provider facilities as well? South Pantano area plan, there's some remarks in here about open space needing to be preserved. This is technically a commercial development, and the area plan says that it needs to be integrated with adjacent commercial development. I understand this is a special, this is an exemption and not a rezoning, but it is a commercial development, and commercial development needs to be integrated with adjacent commercial development. There's plenty of nearby commercially zoned land, and that was something that was identified as being an underutilized asset in the South Pantano area plan.
For context, Mr. Campbell, go back to that slide, please.
Yes, sir.
This is from the South Pantano area plan?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And this is not from a section of the South Pantano area plan that discusses communication towers?
This is just commercial development, generally speaking. And I did notice that it's section, if it was 6.4.4, the section of code that references, these non-residential uses in residential areas, the wireless and communication facilities falls generally under commercial facilities broadly. So,
but what your slide suggests is that this is a part of the plan that talks about strip commercial and the implementation techniques that you've highlighted under that relate to the heading, which is strip commercial.
So if you deem that inapplicable, that's your call as zoning examiner.
I'm just trying to understand what you're saying, sir.
Yeah, I mean, my point here is that there is an abundance of commercial land around this part of the South Pantano area specifically, and the large amount of commercially zoned land has led itself to that strip type development. And
but what does that have to do with what we're here about tonight? I'm not understanding your point.
Yeah, my point is that there is an abundance of surrounding commercial land that is a more appropriate environment for a tower like this to be located in the structure that accompanies the tower specifically.
Okay.
That's it. Plan Tucson.
I'm sorry, if I could just make a point of order. So that seemed like an excerpt from the Pantano East area plan. And this area is in the South Pantano area plan, which is it's a separate area plan.
Okay.
I'm not sure it even applied. So let's just let Mr. Campbell finish his remarks. Please go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Does this really comply with policy 28410? Require telco facilities to be located, installed, and maintained to minimize visual impact and preserve views. Now, it's in one of the nicer areas along golf links, and whether or not it's the exception is appropriate. The part of Plan Tucson that we cite needs to be applicable to the rationale that we present for the proposal. There are parts of Plan Tucson policies that don't necessarily line up with this. There's some green infrastructure policies that didn't make it into the slide. One of the things the UDC requires is no practical alternative. This is a gateway route. New towers are permitted there in exceptional circumstances. One of those exceptional circumstances is that there's no alternative, and the placement is approved in accordance with section 3.5.3, but no alternative. And there seems to be abundant alternatives as indicated by the proliferation of towers in the area. So then finally, this gets back to, I think, the point that was taxing your time earlier, the right-of-way obstruction in complete streets. You've got 17 feet between this proposed structure and the curb. I'm not sure what the distance is between the existing utility easement or right-of-way that they have next to the curb, but between the proximity to traffic and the slope that this goes up against, you can put future multi-use paths either next to the street in a high-stress environment, or you can run them here in this area where I just realized you can't see what I'm gesturing at, but you can put them basically in the vicinity of this proposed structure where where you're farther from traffic and you've got just a nicer physical environment to be moving through.
So just so that I understand, what I heard the applicant say and what I see from the file is this is not a singular standalone tower that's being proposed. Were you, either I'm wrong about that, or if I'm right about that, do you understand that as well?
Yes. This is for replacement of an existing tower with a taller tower, and the construction of an associated structure that's going to house, whatever communication infrastructure to be placed on the tower itself. So, the complete streets plan for this is to have shared use path in the right of way on a case specific basis.
So if I could make a point of clarification, this isn't a new tower or a replacement tower. This is a replacement utility pole, which wouldn't increase the footprint of existing utility poles in the right of way.
And that's what I was trying to suggest, but we can let Mr. Campbell complete his remark.
And that is incorrect. The proposal is to, I think this is where I was losing you in some of the slides in the past. I think we're on different pages here. I have nothing against a taller tower with stuff on it. There's plenty of tall towers in Tucson in the first place. My problem is with the structure and the right of way. And if you look at the plans are to place a structure in the right of way. I'm going to go back to this slide. This on the, says 11.4 wide, 15.4 long. This is going to be a structure that supports the antenna or the transmitters on the taller tower. So this is the project footprint about which I am concerned, most concerned. This footprint eats up a lot of right of way. And you've got a door that swings out, it eats up right of way, even between, the existing perimeter wall on the residential land and the physical footprint of just that enclosed concrete pad with telco infrastructure on it. And I don't think the UDC treats this very well because it refers specifically to towers. It does not talk about the corollary structures that serve some of these towers. And if you look at the existing site, there's a large enclosed fence structure there next to the Walgreens that gives you an idea of what it is you're looking at for these associated structures. But you put this large footprint here in the right of way, that gets you 17 feet where you're either trying to route, if you want to do a wide multi-use path, which is something that is called for in the Complete Streets plan and the Complete Streets design guidelines. This is what these flow charts and tables are taken from this slide here. This is from the Complete Streets guidelines. These are the shared use path and the right of way, that column where there's a lot of pink stuff. There's places where it's not typical and places where it's going to be case specific. And if you look at that flow chart for the case specificity, a major issue is going to be right of way constraints. And any land that we lease in that right of way, especially something with a permanent structure there, becomes a right of way constraint, where you're trying to fit a shared use path between existing utility poles and a structure that eats up a lot of footprint. And the question of what is the best alignment for a multi-use path there? That's a question for DTM. But that right of way there intersects with future plans. That's, if it sounded like I was going on a diatribe and, just riding a hobby horse at the beginning of my remarks, it's because that is a dangerous place to ride. I've got a kid who needs a dad, and I need infrastructure that allows me to move through Tucson safely. we've got a great opportunity to put that infrastructure in place here. So long as the right-of-way is not consumed by uses that cannot be more appropriately deployed anywhere else in the vicinity, you know, why here, why this, and what future uses does this step on? So that's
that's fine. I appreciate your remarks, Mr. Campbell. I think at the risk of, I don't think I'm misstating it. You know, this is one in a line of utility poles.
I'm not talking about the pole. I'm talking about the footprint for the associated structures.
Excuse me, but every one of those utility poles is going to have some structure but beneath it and around it. And so the idea that so you're saying that the whole line of utility poles is going to interfere with a possible multi-use path?
Sir, I'm not saying that. I'm specifically talking about the placement of they refer to it as the equipment compound in the plans. So they want to replace one pole with a tall pole and add this 11 by 15 equipment compound.
I get it.
Okay, I mean,
I always got that.
Oh, okay.
Anything else, sir?
Are you saying that each of these poles has an equipment compound or associated structure associated with it?
This is, you know, I like things to just kind of evolve the way they evolve. This is a hearing. If you have more to say, I'm happy to consider it, listen to it. You know, this is not a debate.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, there's no apology necessary. If you have more, I'm happy to hear it. Let's go.
Yeah. I just feel like I'm stepping on your toes, and I'm sorry.
No, you totally misunderstand, and you're totally misunderstanding the words I'm using. If you have more you'd like to say, please go ahead. I didn't know if you realized that this is not one pole in isolation, but it's one, right? It's one in a series of poles, because when you're telling me about,
I understand what you're saying now. I understand what you're saying.
So I mean, it's fine to zero in on this one particular location, but I just wanted to make sure, and I didn't presume you didn't. I didn't mean to presume you didn't understand, but I just wanted to make sure for clarity that you understood.
Yeah. Okay.
One out of many.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. And my point is that future multi-use infrastructure, you know, multi-use paths, they need to be fit between that existing line of utility poles and the perimeter wall. So there's that existing line of utility poles. Pole replacement with a taller pole does not affect that. I understand that completely. Because that line of poles is already there. That is an existing design constraint on future transportation plans. It's that equipment compound that eats up right-of-way from the other direction that consumes right-of-way and makes it difficult to put in a multi-use path there when that right-of-way is consumed by that single equipment compound. That's all I'm saying. So, big picture issues, is the UDC interpreted and applied in an equitable manner? I don't know. You have one neighborhood that has concerns about tall poles. It's taken very seriously on the basis of the fact that they're, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's, you know, that they are a gateway corridor was what resulted in the undergrounding plans for Campbell. And that was based on a very technical interpretation of the UDC. And if those components of the UDC can be used to protect neighborhoods that have a lot of nice amenities, then those technical components of the UDC should protect neighborhoods that don't have a lot of nice amenities. And that's my point. If it feels like I'm getting into the weeds here on this UDC stuff, the rules need to be followed or they need to not exist. And they need to be followed for the nice neighborhoods and the less nice neighborhoods. That's it. I apologize if that was too much time. I know everyone has families and dinner and other personal obligations. So yeah, thanks.
I have never asked a speaker to curtail their remarks based on the time. If you have something more you want to say, Mr. Campbell, I'm here to hear it.
No, sir. That's it. And I appreciate the time.
Certainly. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, would the applicant like to be heard?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, then I'm closing the hearing on case TPENT 0323-00017. I hope everyone has a lovely evening and thank you for participation tonight. Good night.